Good morning. I'm Betty Jane Tilley, and today is May the 28th, 2017, and I am here on behalf of the Oral History Committee for the Etowah Valley Historical Society. We are here to interview Jean Goss Cowart, a lifelong resident of Bartow County and was born and raised in Euharlee, Georgia. Jean is the past president of the Euharlee Historical Society and has been for many, many years a driving force for continuing the society here. This afternoon, we're going to spend some time sharing your memories of your family and your involvement with Euharlee. And we thank you, Jean, for being a part of this oral history initiative sponsored by the Etowah Valley Historical Society. Jean, let's begin our conversation talking about where you were born and your early years.
Well, I was born just above where Cliff Nelson lives, a little house on the left of the road between his house and the church, at the top of the hill.
All right. And your parents, what are their names?
Oh, I'm sorry, I got
That's
ahead
all right.
of that.
Your mother was?
My mother was Gladys Nelson, and my dad was Ernest Goss.
And what did they do in Euharlee at the time you were born?
What did they do?
Mm-hmm.
Farm.
But she was a homemaker and he was a farmer.
Yes.
Oh, okay. And what have you been told about your father and mother's family?
Well, I grew up. I had my grandparents living there right close to me when I was growing up, so.
Well, now your mother's family were Nelsons.
Right.
And I know Mary Ellen Taft was a Nelson, so
right.
Were they related?
They were related.
Mm-hmm.
She was a cousin.
Okay. Well, the Nelson history in Euharlee has been since the beginning.
Right. I don't know how many great-grandfathers was one of the first to settle here.
Okay. Well, that
Nelson.
Of the Nelson family.
Yeah, Nelson family.
How many children were in your family? Do you have brothers and sisters?
I had 4 sisters and 1 brother, but he did not live.
So you and the sisters were raised in Euharlee.
Right.
And I understand went to school at the Euharlee Institute.
Right. I went there.
Was that through 8th grade or?
Ninth grade.
Through 9th grade.
9th grade.
So after 9th grade, where did you attend school?
I didn't. I got married instead.
Ralph just swooped you off his feet, huh? So you married Ralph Cowart.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I did go back to night school and got my education.
Well, good.
In later years, after my daughter was born and able to take care of herself.
Okay. And we're going to come back and talk about your family in just a minute. But thinking about your parents, describe how you were raised as a farming family in Euharlee.
Well, we had to work in the garden, and when I got old enough, I had to work in the field, hoe cotton, pick cotton, help gather the corn.
Now, speaking of corn, did your father take the corn and go to one of the local mills?
Yes.
What mill do you recall? Would that have been the Lowry Mill?
At the beginning, it was Lowry Mill, yes. And then when it ceased to operate, they had to go to Stylesboro.
Okay. Now, so he grew his own corn, and did he grow wheat?
No. I'd never seen wheat growing in this area when I was growing up. It was in later years before that happened.
So I imagine all of this was done without electricity.
Oh, yes.
So you used, kerosene lamps?
Kerosene lamps.
To study by?
Right.
Now, you had a garden, I'm sure, that supplied all of your family needs for 12 months. I would guess.
Yes.
Now, I recall those without electricity in this area used what they call root cellars. Do you recall a root cellar where
Yes.
they put their potatoes and?
Well,
Did you have-
yeah, that's really what it is. It's a cellar. I mean, dug in the ground.
To keep your some of your row crops
Yes.
that you didn't can, and of course you either.
Oh, we did a lot of canning.
Okay, and all of that was done, I guess, on a cook stove.
Yes, wooden cook stove.
Wood burning stove.
And it was hot as everything. Trying to, we had no electricity, so we had no fans,
Right.
and it was really miserable canning in the summer.
Well, in thinking about your parents, how did they give you life lessons to succeed? Did they want you to try to get a further education?
Oh, yes.
Now, they probably didn't want you to stay on the farm. They wanted you to probably get out and more, or what?
Well, it was never discussed, but there was nothing else to do. If you didn't marry a farmer, you had to go find a job somewhere.
Well, let's talk about that. Did you go find a job before you met Ralph?
No.
Now, how did you meet Ralph?
Well, he lived we lived inside of each other at the time.
Okay, so he was from Euharlee.
When he got out of service was the first time I had met him. And he was, I was grown and he was too, or I thought I was grown. I was only 15, but and of course he had sisters that I was friends with, and so I immediately met him when he got home from service.
Well, now, did you and Ralph go to the Euharlee Institute together?
No.
So,
See, he was older than me.
okay.
He was already out of school, and when I was going to school.
Well, let's go back to the Euharlee Institute, because that was a two-story building, and I'm sure it wasn't. It didn't have electricity at the time you went, or?
Well, we did.
Okay.
Had electricity, one light hanging from the ceiling, in each room.
Interesting. Do you recall taking your lunch to school?
Well, we had a lunchroom and had cooks.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That's probably one of the few schools that did have a lunchroom.
Yeah. Well, most all schools did then.
Okay. All right. What were some of the courses that you took?
Well, just reading, writing, arithmetic.
History?
Well,
Did
yes,
you take
history,
did you
yes.
take a little history?
Yeah.
Tell me about your getting to school. Did you walk, or?
Well, I walked the first years because we didn't get school buses until I was in like the 7th grade.
Okay, and that building is the now parking lot of the police and city of
Yes,
Euharlee.
yes.
Is that correct? So all of your education was in that building.
Right.
Okay. Now, in
Well,
later.
Let me back up. I did go to night school and learn
A trade?
the trade, and shorthand stuff like that. After my daughter was.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your daughter, Ellen, is who you're referring to.
After she was old enough, to leave, I went to night school. Okay.
Well, other than your family, who were the most important people in your life growing up?
My grandparents.
Your grandparents, and I think you said they lived next door to you?
Across the road.
Across the road, and
Yeah.
what kind of influence were they on you?
I always thought that my mama was the best cook in the world. So I watched her do all of her canning and making cakes and stuff like that.
Well, back when you were growing up, did you all raise a hog, and then
yes.
you had your own lard and your own
Yeah.
sausage and
Yeah.
cracklings, and
Yes.
they just don't make crackling cornbread like they used to,
I know.
right?
You can't find cracklings anymore that's fit to eat.
Well, were you the oldest of your sisters? Were you the
Yes,
oldest in
I
your
was the
family?
oldest.
Did you and your sisters get along fairly well, or share the?
Well, no.
No, most don't.
No, I was going to say most don't. Well, you know, we've taken care of each other, but we fought about things also.
Most probably over clothes. Well,
Or
describe
who
some.
was going to do the chores, you know.
I'm sure.
It's not my time, it's yours.
Well, describe some of the happiest times of your childhood.
Well, you know, I could say all of it was happy, especially getting to see, you know, go to my Mama and Daddy Paul's house and eat, because I thought she made the best biscuits and had the best food that ever was.
Was that usually on a Sunday afternoon after church, so to
Yeah,
speak?
yeah.
Mhm. Where did you go to church in
At
Euharlee?
Euharlee Baptist.
Okay, all right. Were there any disappointments during your childhood that you recall?
Not that I can recall.
Well, without electricity, what were your Christmases like? What did you use for, say, ornaments, or did you have a Christmas
We
tree?
had homemade ornaments,
Okay,
you know.
right. Kind of like the little house on the prairie, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah, a lot like that.
Well, describe a typical family dinner together.
Well, we had beans, potatoes, cabbage. I mean, you know, maybe not all the same time, but that's what we had to eat. What you could grow in the garden.
Well, do you have any recipes passed down from your grandmother? Or are they all up in your head?
Mincemeat pie, because she made mincemeat,
The homemade?
homemade mincemeat, and made the pies. So I do have her recipe, and I still make my own mincemeat.
Oh, interesting. Well, where did you go to school? You talked about going to a trade school because your goal was to get out and work, I think.
Yeah, I went to night school at, well, my mind went blank, in Cartersville, you know,
Through Cartersville High School?
yeah, they had night school.
Okay. Well, in your opinion of yourself, did your life change in school so that you knew you didn't want to, you wanted a career path?
Yes.
What do you think influenced those changes?
My teachers.
Your teachers
Yeah.
wanted you, okay. And when you were going to school, who did you look for guidance and advice in school?
My teachers.
Your
you know,
teacher,
just-
great.
See, Mitty Taylor was my primer and first grade teacher. Doris McCormick was my second grade teacher. And right now I can't think who the third grade was.
Well, all of those ladies lived in Euharlee.
They lived, yes, lived in Euharlee.
I think they were a great influence to the community as well.
They were. And did I mention Annie Nelson?
Right.
Okay. Well, she was a cousin of mine, which didn't help in school.
Well, where was your first job?
10-cent store,
Was that Lay's?
Lay's.
Lay's downtown?
No, not Lay's, the one across.
Well, there was one called Pate's.
Pate's is where I worked.
Is that right?
Yeah.
that's on Main Street.
Yes.
All right. And so did you go to school, night school, and go to and worked at 10-cent store?
Well, I didn't go to night school until after that, when I realized that I was going to have to get more education to get a better job. I quit that job, and then I went to night school.
Okay. The next job was as a secretary, was that?
Oh, next job was Easy Mills.
Okay.
Running sewing machine.
Oh, my goodness.
And then that was when I was going to the night school.
Okay. What was your goal in night school? Where did you want to be?
I wanted to have enough education that I could get a job without having to run sewing machine.
All right. So then I think you told me you worked for Watkins Agency?
Yeah, insurance agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I also worked for the county commissioner for 4 years.
Okay. Did you retire from the county? Did you retire from the county?
Yeah.
Well, in between time, you married Ralph Cowart. And what was his avocation?
Farmer.
He was a farmer.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you had a daughter, Ellen.
Right.
Okay. And how many grandchildren do you have?
I have, oh gosh, 5.
Oh, my, okay. Now, is Ellen your only child?
Yes.
Okay. And now, Jonathan, one of your grandchildren, loves history.
Yes, yeah.
And he's been an intern here at
Yes,
Euharlee before. Do you think that his love of history came from you?
I think so.
Okay. Was there another career that you wished you had taken along the way?
No.
Over the years when you have worked, is there anything that you think is absolutely crucial to success in where you worked and to pass on to others? What was your number one steed in working?
That'd be just kind of hard. I just went with the flow.
Did you do mostly typing?
I did
Okay.
some typing, and I did bookkeeping. That I went to night school and got
For the
that.
bookkeeping?
I had to do the bookkeeping. And when I worked for the county commissioner, what I did was the bookkeeping.
And I bet it was done all by hand.
Oh, of course. Did
You didn't have a calculator? Or?
We had one of those big calculators.
Really, one of those
Yeah,
humongous?
About this big.
Oh, well, now everything's on computer. Do you think that
Right.
you could work in today's world very easily?
Well, I did. Before I retired, I worked with computers.
Okay, all right. Well, let's go back to Ralph. When you met him, was your family happy about you getting married?
No, because he was older than I was, and they were very upset, but didn't change our mind.
Well, did you get married in a church or by the justice of the peace?
Justice of the peace.
Now, so you moved from, did you live here in Euharlee with Ralph, or when did you move to Cartersville?
We had a house in Sugar Valley,
Okay.
but at the beginning, go back, I forgot about that, my goodness. We lived upstairs. See, we all lived in the 2-story building I was talking about, where Faye lived, Faye Nelson's place. Mom and Daddy lived in the bottom. Me and Ralph lived in the top part when we first married. And then we moved to Sugar Valley. The way after Ellen was born, and and of course they spoiled her to death.
But now, that was with your parents or your grandparents?
My parents.
With your parents?
Yes.
Okay.
in that big two-story building that used to be there where Faye lives now.
Okay. Jean, what did you enjoy the most about being a parent and then a grandparent?
Well, I suppose just dressing my daughter up.
Did you make her clothes?
I made her clothes and always tried to keep her looking really frilly.
Well,
and of course, that's one thing I didn't tell you. But my grandmother, Nelson, taught me how to sew. My mother could not sew anything. She was left-handed, so therefore her mother could not teach her how to do anything, she said.
Well, that's true. Trying to learn from a left-handed person is difficult. Well, and you said that you made most of Ellen's clothes as a younger child on a pedal machine?
All of them.
On a pedal sewing machine?
Yes, yeah.
Well,
made our own clothes, mine and Mama's and my sister's.
I've always heard that some of the fabric were flour sacks.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was all.
Is that all you had to?
All we had.
Well, they were pretty. They were beautiful, multicolors.
And, you could get enough flour sacks of the same pattern to make a dress.
Interesting. Well, now, did you...
Eventually. It'd take a while.
Did you shop at the country store in Euharlee growing up? Or is that where you went to get other things like coffee and sugar? It was at the...
Bill Taylor's.
At Bill Taylor's store. Okay.
Right.
All righty. Do you enjoy your grandchildren growing up?
Yeah, I just had one.
You had one child, Ellen.
Yeah.
Tell me about your grandchildren. You had
my
five?
grandchildren.
Yeah, you had five?
Yeah, I enjoy them. Great-grandchildren. I've got great-great-grandchildren.
Oh, my goodness. Well, what is the best piece of advice you ever gave Ellen, do you think?
I have no idea.
Probably to go on to school and
Stay
in school. Usually when you talk about yourself going to night school, you usually try to encourage your child not to do that, but to go on to college now.
Yeah.
Did she?
Well, she did a little bit of college.
Okay.
I mean, not away, but just, night school.
Night school too. All right.
But she got married as soon as she got out of high school also.
Well, maybe that was still a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, did you attend family reunions in Euharlee? Was that a big thing around this? It was a social gathering, wasn't it? To catch up on all the news.
Well, we've always had Nelson family reunion.
You still do, don't you?
We still do.
And how long has that been going on?
Ever since I can remember.
So
and probably before I was born.
Are they well received now?
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
We had one 2 weeks ago.
Where did you
at Euharlee Baptist Church.
Okay. All right.
Annex.
Okay. How are you like your parent, or different from your parent?
I think I'm pretty much like my mother.
Well, your mother was the glue that kept the family together, I would say. Did she outlive your father?
Yes.
Okay.
He had a stroke when he was 68 years old. He was working in the field and died in the field when he was 68.
Oh, my goodness. A lot of people did die in the fields because they worked from sun up to sundown so hard, and we didn't know about the harshness of being in the sun like we do now.
Well, the doctor said he had a heat stroke.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, how did you become involved with the Euharlee Historical Society?
Marilyn Taft
Okay.
roped me in right at the beginning. She had a few items on display at the library. And we were at Euharlee for something, and she started talking about she wanted to start a museum. So she started gathering stuff. And every time she'd see me, she said, I need you to help me with this. So I did.
Well, now, the first museum was on the Lowry property.
Right.
And they used what buildings for? One of them was the cowshed.
Yeah, well, to start with, though, she was in this little bitty building that it was a house. I don't know if you remember that. Somebody lived in there, and they had moved out. It was, and she got it, rented it from, I guess, from the Lowrys.
Okay. And then they added the cowshed to that later?
Well, no. The cowshed was moved there from out in the middle of that
property.
Yeah.
I think Frankie Harris was the city manager at the time and was instrumental in helping you all with the project of getting a historical site together.
So then, later was moved into the other building, but was in the cowshed to start with.
The cowshed is still on the property, but the other building, because of termites, I think, it had to be destroyed, the original museum. Is that right? The original museum.
Oh.
I think they tore that down about the time they were building the new library, perhaps. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then they moved the old parsonage, which actually is the oldest now standing.
That's the oldest building. That's the oldest. That building was not there originally, was it?
No, not next to it was in front of the Baptist church.
At the Baptist church.
And it was used as a parsonage.
Right.
And then, as I recall, they wanted to move it off of the property.
Yeah.
And Miss Harris found the funding to get it moved to the right of the bridge.
Yes.
And that became a larger museum at the time. The 20th anniversary of the EHS is coming up in July, and I know that it relied on volunteers very early on, and you were one of those.
Yes.
And what did you enjoy most about getting a museum going?
Well, it was just something that I didn't know that I would love so, but older things and history about the different people and the different items just intrigued me. So.
Well, you've been our Sunday volunteer or Saturday volunteer for many, many years, and I know you've seen a lot of people, even from a lot of different countries. Yeah. What do you think was one of the most interesting families that you ever got to meet?
Oh, it'd be hard to say. I'd be afraid I might hurt somebody's feelings if I did.
Well, don't you think for Euharlee the draw is the covered bridge?
It is. We had many more visitors when we were down there next to the bridge than we do here.
Well, we're working on that. But you're right. That building is still there, and I think there are future plans to incorporate that more in with the Lowry Mill project.
Well, see, there's a lot of items still in that building that I think people ought to be seeing.
Yeah, well, maybe that's something we can continue to work on. Well, if you had to live your life over again, is there anything you would change, or is there anything you want to do that you haven't done yet?
No, I think I've done about everything I've ever wanted to do.
Well, we were kind of talking earlier that it was interesting for you to work for a county commissioner, and you probably saw different people along the way. And what do you think is probably the biggest change in Bartow County that you've seen in your 80-plus years?
Good gracious. everything has changed. I mean, it'd be hard to say.
Well, you can't stop progress, they say,
Right.
but also, you know, Euharlee is going to hopefully have sewerage in, and they're hoping to develop the downtown more. Do you think that's going to be a good thing for Euharlee?
Oh, I do.
Because we don't want this to be a dying town, right?
I think that that's the best thing they could have ever done is get that started, because eventually, the way it is now, I'm afraid people get sick.
Yeah. Well,
You know, living that close with no sewerage.
right. Well, it's going to be helpful to get restaurants in the downtown.
Yeah.
What would I be surprised to learn about you that I might not know?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, what do you do in your, say, downtime now that you have retired from being a volunteer? What's your favorite
My favorite,
activity?
I don't really do much anymore except sit and read. I love to read.
Love to read. What do you like to read about history?
I read history and I read novels and
Well-
I like to work word puzzles also.
Well, see, that would be something I did not know about you. What do you hope to be remembered for?
I had never even thought about that.
What do you hope your children and grandchildren will remember about you? Like you remember your grandmother was a good cook. So what do you hope they remember about
Well,
you?
you know, I don't see my grandchildren and great-grandchildren much. They do not come to see me like we visited my grandmother.
I would say that's one thing that has changed in society.
Changed a lot, yeah.
Families used to get together at least once a week for dinner. Now they're off scattered all over the place.
Growing up, you know, we went and visited our grandparents every weekend.
Exactly. Well, I agree with you. I don't see mine near as much either. We communicate by cell phone. Do you have one?
Yeah.
Do you have a cell phone?
Yeah.
You do?
Except it's not working right now, but I had a cell phone. I've got to get it replaced.
I want to thank you, Jean, for taking this time to share your life and some of the interesting portions of it. I hope that we have a better insight of growing up in Euharlee and Bartow County. I think you have given us a good insight in the early days of Euharlee.
Well, you know, there's one thing that I'd like to say about that. You remember we did have a cheese factory here at one time.
I don't remember it, but I've heard about
Well,
it.
yeah, but it was still in operation when I was born, and my daddy worked there for a while,
Where was that located?
where Leroy's office is.
Okay, the first city hall, I think, also.
Yeah,
Yeah, they call it the Blue Building.
that was where the cheese factory was,
Oh, interesting.
and my daddy delivered cheese from Euharlee to Atlanta. And this was when I was just real little. And we lived in on Main Street in Euharlee.
Well, I think people tend to forget that Euharlee was a huge city at one time and had a lot of different things. They had granaries and grist mills and a lot of things that are hoping we can get back to survive. Don't think we could do a cheese factory, but I've often heard about that. And glad to know that your dad worked there for them. And on behalf of the Etowah Valley Historical Society Oral History Committee, I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Thank you.